Hello and welcome to another marvelous video. I'm your host Will. To me, my X-Men fans, being a mutant is probably the coolest thing you can be in the Marvel Universe. But not all mutants are created equal. And in this video, we're gonna go over a couple of weird mutants and their weird powers. Let's get to it, shall we? We're usually familiar with a kind of mutants who can fly, control minds, have metal-bending powers, but still, after all that, look extremely handsome or beautiful. But always remember, the universe of the X-Men is not only made of these good-looking mutants who can easily blend in with humans and lead a normal life, but just like reality, this fictional world of superheroes has also seen bigotry and discrimination. The mutants born with physical deformities were straight up abandoned by society, all because of their deformed figures and the dangerous manifestations of their powers. By just looking at these poor souls, you'd understand their pain and the humiliation they'd faced all throughout their lives, leading them to become immoral and inhuman. In today's video, I'm gonna talk about some of these scary-looking mutants who are not your usual superheroes. So, if you want to know how hard life has been for them, hang tight till the end of this video and let's get started. Marrow, Sarah Rushman. Marrow's raw mutant powers and her physical deformity make her physical transformation the most tragic amongst the mutants. Sarah Rushman, aka Marrow, has a very weird bone function and a fast metabolism, leading to very unnatural growths of her bones. The bones in her body protrude from her skin, covering her with spikes like armor. She first appeared in the 1994 comic Cable, issue number 15, and then once again in the 95 published comic X-Men Prime, issue number 1. Where she first took the codename Marrow. Well, she is indeed a strong mutant with great combat abilities, but her life is full of tragic evolutions. She's a natural-born mutant with a grotesque bony face and an untamed look that didn't let her live a normal life amongst humans, and she grew up amongst the underground Morlocks. When Mr. Sinister's marauders attacked them, causing the mutant massacre, she was only a young girl who was rescued by Gambit. Another harsh transformation happened during her exposure to the brutal environment of the Hill by Mikhail Rasputin, but later, Weapon X and Skrull technology gave her a more human-like appearance. Her rapid bone growth and fast metabolism give her supernatural healing powers as well, which help her heal her wounds rapidly even after being terribly injured. She also has two functioning hearts, like in one instance when she was leading the terrorist group Gene Nation and fighting against the X-Men. Storm ripped her heart out to disarm a bomb, but it turned out that Marrow had a spare heart, helping her survive the injury. It didn't end well for Marrow, as during M-Day, along with many mutants, she also lost her powers. She joined the X-Cell, which sought help from Quicksilver to restore them. Years later, she approached Volga's program and underwent an experiment to restore her powers. Marrow finally got her powers back, but at the terrible cost of losing her unborn child, which broke her down mentally. She couldn't process the loss, which drove her to take on a manic personality. Emplate, Marius St. Croix. Well, Marrow was a victim of a terrible upbringing and poor circumstances, but it isn't the same for the next mutant I'm going to talk about, because the main driving force for his antagonism was his desperate need for survival. Created by Scott Lobdell and Chris Bacalo, Marius St. Croix, aka Emplate, first appeared in Generation X number 1, published in 1994. He is the older brother of M, aka Monet St. Croix, whose other infamous persona is Penance. Marius was an unfortunate mutant who needed to drain another mutant's life force in order to survive, and that's why his palms had feeder mouths, which he attached to other mutants' bodies, sucking the life out of them. If he fully drains the energy source, it leaves his victims dead or catatonic. But if it's only partially done, then Marius can use his psychic powers to mind control the victims, turning them into his slaves, while they're trapped inside a pocket dimension. If Marius fails to drain the source or lacks sustenance, he himself can get trapped in the dimension, while otherworldly creatures attack and torture him. So to stay protected, he gets desperate for a mutant energy source. When his powers first manifested at a young age, he killed his mother, so his father kicked him out. Over time, a lack of life force damaged his lungs, leading him to wear a large respiratory apparatus attached to his mouth for proper breathing. Marius wanted to conquer the world through his dark magical powers, so he asked for his sister Monet's help. But when Monet rejected his offer and arranged, Marius used the same dark magic to trap his sister inside a feral but silent being called Penance, with red, razor-sharp skin. However, Penance eventually broke free, and Monet later returned to her identity as M. In the alternate Age of Apocalypse reality, M-Plate was shot to death by Christopher Summers, but he was later resurrected under Weapon Omega's regime. Toad, Mortimer Toynbee. The next tragic mutant on this list is Mortimer Toynbee, aka Toad, a mutant with amphibian characteristics and a sad backstory. Toad was once nothing but an abandoned baby in York, England. His physical deformities made his parents leave the child, but even in the orphanage, he was abused and humiliated. So it was ultimately Magneto who saved him from the hellhole and recruited him into his Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. Now, the most interesting thing about Toad is that his physical deformities are his truest powers. Despite having a hunchback, his big and flexible arms and legs help him make massive leaps. His body is extremely agile and flexible, as you can see him literally twisting his body, crawling on ceilings and walls with the help of his adhesive fingers, which secrete a sticky, slime-like substance. He can also secrete psychoactive mucus and paralytic chemicals to attack his targets. Also, his long and wiggly muscular tongue is 25 feet long and can be used as a whip or a lasso to capture and squeeze his enemies. First appearing in X-Men issue number 4, published in 1964, Toad later became an important character in this universe. Even in screen adaptations like X-Men, X-Men Days of Future Past in 2014, and the 2024 release Deadpool and Wolverine, we see Toad being portrayed by several actors, like Ray Park or Evan Jonigkeit, who portrayed a younger version of the mutant in Days of Future Past. However, Toad is one of the lost potentials of a mutant because he may look like a stupid little frog guy, but he's a highly intelligent being who is familiar with alien tech. But the thing that held him back was his low confidence. After years of being bullied by stronger leading personalities, he unintentionally became dependent on them. So despite having sharp intelligence, Toad suffered from an inferiority complex which had no cure. Caliban. Apocalypse's horseman of pestilence, Caliban, was once a thin and frail guy with a chalk-white skin tone and diseased yellow eyes. Created by Chris Claremont and David Cockrum, he first appeared in Uncanny X-Men issue number 148, where he was a natural-born mutant with extremely weak powers. There were no strong combat abilities in him, and on top of that, he had unusual speech patterns and deformed physical features. His father rejected him, and he ran away to the underground mutant group of Morlocks. However, the most precious power he had was sensing the presence of other mutants over a great distance. So Callisto, using his powers, tracked down all the unfortunate mutants who'd been suffering for their physical uniqueness and being tortured by society. She gathered all the mutants under the sewer tunnels of New York City, but after the marauders attacked them, the group was scattered, and most of them died. Well, Caliban's other most useful ability was his defensive technique, which was feeding on the fear of his enemies, which temporarily gave him some strength. Apocalypse, however, turned him into one of his horsemen by manipulating his genetic composition and completely transforming his body into a hulking henchman. Every power he possessed got heightened, as well as having sharp claws and fangs that made him a formidable enemy. The transformation made him even stronger when he rose to become the Horseman of Pestilence. Caliban has been portrayed by actors like Stephen Merchant in the 2017 film Logan and by Thomas Lemarquis in the 2016 film X-Men Apocalypse. Glob Herman. Robert Herman. The mutant transformation of Robert Herman, aka Glob Herman, looks kinda weird and funny, but deep down in the lore, it's also quite painful and tragic, to be honest. Glob Herman first appeared in the 2001 comic New X-Men series issue number 117, where his normal human skin was replaced by bioparaffin wax, making his internal anatomy transparent through his skin. You can see his skeleton, his internal organs, like the beating heart, lungs, his guts, organized in a perfect human anatomical pattern, but they're floating without any organic cavity. When his mutant powers first manifested, giving him this transformation, it angered his anti-mutant extremist father, who lashed out at him. To save her child from his abusive father, his mother put him in Xavier's Institute. His humiliating past had partially changed his mind, as under the influence of his extremist mutant friend Quentin Quire, he joined the radical mutant protest, but later abandoned those staunch beliefs and found a peaceful solution in Charles Xavier's ideology of coexistence. Glob can be a funny-looking creature, but his powers shouldn't be ignored at all. Being fully covered with the wax, he can absorb electric shock and regenerate from injuries. In one instance, the Purifiers catfished him and strapped him with a vest containing a bomb to blow up the Xavier Institute. But the bomb detonated in the school's entrance without injuring anyone, while Glob himself survived the explosion. His bioparaffin body is extremely flammable, so he can set himself on fire and be a walking flame to attack his enemies with fiery chunks. After getting done with the fight, his body can regenerate because of his healing factor. Although in the comics he became a diligent student of Xavier Institute, in the 2006 movie X-Men: The Last Stand, Herman was portrayed by Clayton Dean Watmuth as a member of the Brotherhood of Mutants. Beak, Barno Bohusk. In the same New X-Men comic series issue 117, alongside Glob Herman, we're introduced to another mutant named Barnell Bohusk, aka Beak. Beak was one of the weakest mutants who never had a proper transformation in his entire lore in X-Men. His appearance is bird-like, with feathers all over his thin and bony limbs, talon-like fingers, and a large and awkward beak instead of his mouth. His powers are really a lot weaker than those of his fellow mutants in the Xavier Institute. Born in Rotterdam, Netherlands, he was once ostracized from society because of his uniqueness, but even later, when he enrolled in the Xavier Institute, he didn't have much evolution. Despite having feathers and the anatomy of a bird, he didn't have proper flight. The only thing he could do was glide over the land and beat up his enemies with the help of a titanium baseball bat that he carries with him in a shoulder case. While at the school, he fell in love with a fellow mutant, Angel Salvador, and fathered many children with her, some of whom were bird-like mutants and some were insect-like. In 2004, he also joined the reality-changing team of Exiles, where he finally used his clever ideas and leadership qualities to recruit 2 alternate versions of Hyperion to help defeat King Hyperion and stop him from conquering the multiverse. Mask. First appearing in the 169th issue of Uncanny X-Men, published in 1983, Mask became a very important character in Marvel Comics, especially during the Mutant Massacre, and his rise as the leader of the Morlocks. So Mask has a very unique power of reshaping people's flesh, making them look either beautiful or grotesquely monstrous. But unfortunately, a naturally deformed figure, Mask couldn't use that power on himself, and that's why he remained an ugly face according to societal norms. Being an outcast in the world, he was extremely bitter and jealous of people who looked beautiful, so he misused his powers in order to mess with people's physicality instead of treating their deformities. However, he did treat Callisto, giving her the conventional beauty of a model, but he did it with an ulterior motive. He tricked Callisto into choosing beauty, which gradually made her grow distant from her own people, the Morlocks. Although later, when she tried to oppose Mask, he used his powers to turn Callisto's arms into long tentacles. He later transformed Jean Grey's arms into tentacles and removed Banshee's mouth. Mask's actual origin story and his real name remained unknown, but in the multiple comic appearances, whenever he revealed his face, it looked grotesque and incomprehensible. Later, he was believed to have been killed by a Shatterstar's sword, but he survived and came back with a secondary mutation that finally gave him the power to reshape his own flesh. For a while, he chose to take a female form, cosplaying as Marilyn Monroe in Extreme X-Men. But this particular change caused a lot of confusion among readers, as the writers even changed his pronouns, confusing his gender for a while. Leech. There is confusion around these 2 mutant characters, Toad and Leech, but clearly these 2 are completely different from each other, even in terms of their physical appearance and mutant powers. The most fascinating thing about Leech is that his physical appearance doesn't even align with the powers he possesses. Leech has no official real name in the canon, although later adaptations like X-Men Evolution and X-Men Last Stand have given him different names, so for now, let's just call him Leech. Leech has a very reptilian appearance with green reptilian skin, round yellow eyes, a bald head, and small pointed ears. His unique appearance made his parents abandon the boy when he was little, so Caliban became the one to rescue him and bring him to the Morlocks, where another mutant named Anna Lee, a caring mother who lost her own children, took care of him. Now, if we talk about his powers, they don't have anything to do with his reptilian features. He has a strong ability to cancel other mutants' powers. He can create a dampening field extending up to about 50 feet, and those who come within that field can lose their powers. This is a huge deal for many anti-mutant and mutant experimenting organizations, so Leech became a high priority for them. The Weapon X program tried to use Leech's power to depower other mutants and keep them in prison for experiments. But despite all this, Leech was one of the kindest young mutants. In his childhood, His powers were uncontrollable, but over time, he learned how to control them. His best friend, Artie Maddox, a mutant telepath, became an important character in X-Men. Later, after escaping the sewer tunnels, he joined Generation X, as well as becoming a student in the Fantastic Four's Future Foundation. Bliss. A very important sidekick to Mask, Bliss appeared alongside her master in the underground mutant group of Morlocks and helped him conquer the team. We don't know her official real name other than the codename Bliss, but in times of need she had taken up many forms, like during the fight with the X-Men, where Mask reshaped her to resemble Jean Grey. Mask also made many lookalikes of the X-Men members, but in a battle, when his forged version of Storm was killed, he reshaped Bliss into Storm as well. Now, Bliss's most unique power is her prehensile tongue with a human face at the tip. This human face has eyes and a venomous mouth that can knock her enemies unconscious. Well, it also kinda looks funny. But Bliss's tongue-mouth combination also affected Colossus's body made of steel. She was one of the very few mutants who survived both a Marauders-inflicted mutant massacre as well as M-Day. She was loyal to her master, Mask, and stayed with him for a long time, even though sometimes his methods of torture didn't align with her ideology. She stayed with him long enough until the X-Men defeated Mask and destroyed his plan to blow up the entire subway tunnel. During the time when Cyclops and Storm asked the Morlocks to visit San Francisco, Bliss came under the possession of the Shadow King and attacked Cyclops in the process. She was also an inmate of the Robert Kelly Correctional Facility, but during the Reign of X era, she once again returned with the Morlocks. Although in some theories and speculations people call her Barbara Stacy, it's not actually her officially confirmed name in the canon. Artie Maddox. Created by Bob Layton and Jackson Goose, Arthur Maddox, aka Artie Maddox, appeared in X-Factor No. 2 for the first time in 1986. A young mutant with some really grotesque body transformation, Artie first felt the change on his 11th birthday, when his normally pale skin became bright pink, his eyes lost their pupils, and his head became extraordinarily large or swollen. However, his bodily transformation had nothing to do with the mutant powers he developed in the process. His mutation also left him permanently mute. Now that his mutant powers made him silent, he communicated with the help of his telepathic holograms. He could create three-dimensional holographic displays of his and other people's thoughts, memories, and desires. But even after losing so much, he found a best friend in Leech. He first met Leech in X-Factor after his father, Dr. Carl Maddox, who wanted to find a cure for mutation, was killed by Ryan's lab security, and X-Factor took the little Artie in as one of their youngest wards. From then on, his friendship with Leech continued to grow, and the two became an inseparable pair. The two stayed together, and Artie later joined the Exterminators, with whom he survived the demonic Inferno events. Just like Leech, Artie also joined Generation X at Massachusetts Academy before finally becoming a student at the Fantastic Four's Future Foundation. Well, that's all for this one, folks. We hope you enjoyed it. Please like and subscribe for more marvelous content. Until then, stay safe. Excelsior!